These seasons were iconic. These all-time great players performed at a historic level. They're hardly ever spoken about until today. Is 1 hour of detailed stories and analysis covering the most underrated seasons by the following players: Kobe Bryant in 2002, Hakeem Olajuwon in 1990, Michael Jordan in 1987, Wilt Chamberlain in 1964, Dwyane Wade in 2009, the 1962 seasons of Jerry West and Elgin Baylor, and Vince Carter in 2000. Bring your expertise to the conversation and comment on your thoughts on these seasons and players. The 2001 Lakers had just finished the most dominant postseason run in league history. They went 15-1 and posted a margin of victory of 12.8 points. We have never seen a duo completely destroy their opponents like that. Kobe Bryant asserted himself into the top 5 player in the world conversation. Now he knew exactly what he needed to do to put his team in the best position to win, and he rarely went off script. The 2002 Lakers got off to an extremely hot start. They started with a 17-3 record. People seriously considered whether they would beat the 72-win season by the 96 Bulls. After what they did in the 2001 playoffs, the hype surrounding this team was real. Shaq suffering through injuries and the team going on cruise control to complete the extremely tough three-peat run later brought them back to earth. But if you know anything about Kobe, you know that he only knows one speed. And he was doing everything in his power to continue improving. The numbers say that he was a better player. For the season, he averaged 25.2 points on 47% shooting, 5.5 assists, 5.5 rebounds, and 1.5 steals per game.
Ability to overcome anything that you throw at him, he's just going to keep on coming. He's going to keep on finding a way, whether it was contesting his shot and then he goes in the summertime and works on it to where he takes that little bit of something that you might have had over him, he takes it away from you because he was willing to go so far deep down the rabbit hole that not everybody was willing to do, whether it was getting up early, whether it was staying late, attention to detail, all the different things. And it was the highest level of basketball and the highest level of respect because there was competition on both sides that, in so many ways saved basketball, in my opinion. Those were some really great series.
He was the only player in the league that averaged over 25 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds per game. On top of that, this was his most efficient season of his career. This highlights the maturity in his game. He wasn't forcing the issue as much as in the prior year. In the half-court setting, he was as polished as any player. His masterful footwork and gamesmanship allowed him to score with regularity on the post and in the mid-range. He had no problems with destroying his opponents methodically, but there was always a possibility of finishing with a strong move to the basket. He was very unassuming. It's like he was calculating the right time and angle to make his move. And then he would zoom past his defender for a thrilling move at the basket. The best example of his scoring prowess came against the Memphis Grizzlies. Shaq was not playing due to a suspension, but he made sure to score enough for both.
A piece so far. Kobe Bryant, guarded by Grant, long skips up underneath. Eat that up. Kobe Bryant, right side around, long gets away. Kobe Bryant tries to get away, split the double team, no. Tough shot falling away to 58. Kobe Bryant behind his back on the runner. Side, Kobe gave it up. Kobe into the lane, pulls up 17-foot jump shot.
He recorded 56 points on 62% shooting, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 steal in just 3 quarters. A 70-point performance was a real possibility if he played the entire game. Samaki Walker said afterwards that he was making a different move every time down the floor, that he'd never seen anything like it before. If that doesn't perfectly explain the Black Mamba's game, I don't know what does. Performances like these helped him earn All-NBA First Team, All-NBA Defensive Second Team, and a 5th place finish in MVP voting. The accolades are great, but this was all about accomplishing the incredibly rare feat of winning 3 straight titles. If there's one word we would use to describe his 2002 playoff run, it would be clutch. Kobe had already established himself as the game's best closer, but he was just proving his case even further. Take for example the semifinal series against the Spurs. In Game 1, he hurt his knee early in the 4th quarter, but came back with about 4.5 minutes left. He ended up making the biggest shot of the contest that put the Spurs away. Then in Game 3, he went a perfect 5 of 5 from the field and scored 11 points in the 4th quarter. But in Game 4, that's when he had one of his most underrated moments. He had another double-digit scoring 4th quarter, he had 12 points on 3 of 6 shooting. But many of his critics forget that he had the game-winning putback with 5 seconds remaining, and he had to sky for the offensive rebound. His never-ending energy and unwillingness to quit on the possession is what made the difference. For the third game in a row, he had yet another double-digit scoring fourth quarter in Game 5. This closed out a team that won 58 games and had the MVP of the league. Despite the Spurs having the Twin Towers guarding the paint, despite an All-NBA defender hounding Kobe, he still managed to average 26.2 points per game on 46% shooting for the series. Just for context, Shaq was limited to 21.4 points per game on 45% shooting. In the conference finals against the Sacramento Kings, Lakers faced their biggest test from the three-peat run. They were down 3-2 in the series, and that's when Kobe made a huge impact in every facet of the game. In the controversial Game 6, he had 31 points on 50% shooting, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists. In Game 7, he didn't have the most efficient performance. Under that intensity and environment, the Lakers struggled as a team to make shots. They shot 42% for the game. But Kobe understood very early the importance of contributing in other aspects when your shot isn't falling. His all-around excellence was pivotal. He ended with a stat line of 30 points on 39% shooting, 10 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. And then we have another clutch moment, this time in the finals. It was a moment that perfectly illustrates why this Lakers team was so unfair. The New Jersey Nets had no answers for Shaq. He was too big, too strong, and too skilled. They had to focus so much energy and attention in containing him. But even when you find a way to make it close, you still have to stop the greatest closer in the game. In the fourth quarter of Game 3, he scored 12 points on 56% shooting, and he was making some of the most ridiculous shots. It all culminated when he made this tough basket with 19 seconds remaining to put away the game. It was just one clutch performance after another. On top of that, he produced an impressive stat line for the finals. He averaged 26.8 points on 51% shooting, 5.8 rebounds, 5.3 assists, and 1.5 steals per game. This was done against a team that finished first in defensive rating. It's been nearly 25 years and we still haven't had a team to win 3 titles in a row. This only increases the value of this season and Kobe's overall case for the greatest player of all time. If you ever wondered why the Defensive Player of the Year award was named after Hakeem Olajuwon, look no further than his 1990 season. He had arguably the greatest defensive season in modern day history. Let's first start with the mind-blowing numbers. He averaged 24.3 points on 50% shooting, 14 rebounds, 4.6 blocks, 2.9 assists, and 2.1 steals per game. He recorded the 5th highest blocks per game average, the 14th highest defensive win shares, and the 17th highest defensive box plus minus ever. Since the merger, it's the 2nd highest defensive win shares. Ladies and gentlemen, we're just getting started. This is only the 2nd time that players average over 4 blocks and 2 steals for a season. David Robinson is the only other player to accomplish this feat. Since blocks became an official stat, this is the 2nd highest total of rebounds and blocks combined behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's 1976 season. Simply put, this is one of the top candidates for the greatest defensive seasons ever. And he didn't win the Defensive Player of the Year award. The player selected was Dennis Rodman. He was someone who didn't finish in the top 10 for either rebounds or blocks that year. There isn't a single metric that one can use to argue for him winning that award. I give Hakeem a lot of credit for being a good sport after being a victim of this atrocity, but even he couldn't wrap his head around the reasoning behind this decision. He told reporters he's a very good defensive player. They try to build him up as a defensive player. That's his role, so I understand his reputation. But what do you call defense? Rebounding, block shots, steals. What else is defense? End of quote. I would say that pretty much sums it up. And if the league voters weren't impressed by what he was doing on a game-to-game basis, then I don't know what could have. This guy was putting up 2K numbers on the regular. For example, he had the amazing stat line of 24 points, 21 rebounds, 12 blocks, and 5 steals against the Utah Jazz. That is the only time a player has ever recorded over 20 points, 20 rebounds, 10 blocks, and 5 steals in a game. Then there's what he did against the Orlando Magic. He posted 32 points, 25 rebounds, 10 blocks, and 3 steals. We've only seen Wilt Chamberlain and Nate Thurmond post over 30 points, 25 rebounds, and 10 blocks in a game. Let's not forget that he also posted his career high in points that season. He gave the Denver Nuggets 52 points on 62% shooting, 18 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, and 3 steals. To have an idea of the level he was playing, here's what he did against a player who stole his award.
P. Floyd against Isaiah. Goes dotted line to Hakeem. He'll turn and gun. Houston to Hakeem. Hakeem double turns and finger rolls at a baseline. Dish it back to Rodman. Out top side Isaiah. Good blind dish to Sally. Tried to jam it with a foul. Inside to Hakeem, and he'll turn and hang. Olajuwon spinning dotted line and firing. There's another impossible shot.
He gave the Pistons 37 points on 58% shooting, 25 rebounds, 5 blocks, and 2 assists. I hate to be the guy just reading off box scores, but when it comes to Hakeem the Dream, it's just too much for us to ignore. How can I not mention that he recorded the ultra-rare quadruple double against the Milwaukee Bucks? He gave them 18 points, 16 rebounds, 11 blocks, and 10 assists. Here's the crazy part of that season. A few weeks prior to that game, he recorded 29 points, 18 rebounds, 11 blocks, 9 assists, and 5 steals against the Warriors. According to the Washington Post, members of the Rockets staff spotted what they believed was an uncredited assist in the first quarter. They tried to change the assist total to 10, but the NBA did not accept that adjustment. So unofficially, Hakeem accomplished a feat that's only been done 4 times in history, twice in 1 year. I'm telling you, the superlatives that we use to describe Hakeem are never an overreaction. In fact, I think he doesn't get talked about enough. He was unquestionably a bona fide MVP candidate, but such honors don't usually go to players whose teams don't have a winning record.
What about this team of yours? All of a sudden it looks like you've started to play the kind of ball we expected all year.
I think we are playing on the level that we would like to. We would like to finish the season very strong.
Not long ago, though, you were saying you might want to get out of Houston and go someplace else and play.
That is true. There's still a possibility.
That's why he finished 7th in MVP voting. The Rockets were not a well-rounded team, and they depended on their star center too much. That was even more apparent when they faced the Los Angeles Lakers in the first round. The game plan was simple: swarm Hakeem and force anyone else to beat them. This explains why he averaged only 18.5 points per game for the series. He tried everything he could to slow down the Lakers' high-powered offense. He had 7 blocks and 3 steals in Game 1, and then he posted 10 blocks and 2 steals in Game 2. But it wasn't enough. They were eliminated in 4 games. It's obvious they needed much more to be true contenders. Despite the way their season ended, it doesn't take anything from what he accomplished. From a defensive standpoint, you can make the case we haven't seen anything better since. Maybe the NBA recognized his mistake by naming the most prestigious award for defenders after him. Better than Wilt Chamberlain when he averaged 50 points per game? Better than Kobe Bryant when he scored 81 points in a game and outscored a strong Dallas Mavericks team by himself? That's right. For reasons we're about to discuss, Michael Jordan had the greatest scoring season in NBA history. When did this happen? This was in the 1986-87 season, when he averaged 37.1 points per game. Let's first start with a statistical case. He recorded the highest points per game average by any player since the NBA/ABA merger, which occurred in the 1976-77 season. If we account for all of history, it's the 5th highest points per game average. He also racked up the 3rd most total points scored for a single season. He scored a total of 3,041 points. The only other player to score over 3,000 points in a season is Wilt Chamberlain. Then we have this other impressive scoring feat. For most players, scoring over 40 points in a game would be one of the highlights of their season. But for MJ, it was considered a disappointment when he didn't score that much. He was able to score 40 or more points in 37 games. That's nearly half of the season. That is the 3rd most ever, behind only Wilt Chamberlain's 1962 and 1963 seasons. But that's not all. There were also 8 games where he scored 50 points or more. His season high was 61 points, which he did twice against the Atlanta Hawks and the Detroit Pistons. We'll talk more about that game later in this video. Here's another crazy accomplishment that Jordan had this season. Do y'all remember when Kobe Bryant scored 40 or more points in 9 consecutive games in the 2002/03 season? Well, Michael did the same thing. He scored 40 or more points in 9 straight games. After that historic streak, his arms got tired from all that shooting, and he was held to 11 points by the Milwaukee Bucks, which ended the streak. So just for good measure, he had 2 straight 40-point games that could have pushed the streak to 12 games. Speaking of sensational scoring streaks, Jordan also scored 50 or more points in 3 straight games. By the way, the only other player to match or surpass that streak in the modern era is Kobe Bryant. He scored 50 or more in 4 consecutive games in 2007. The numbers do not lie. What he did in that season was nothing short of historic, and we haven't seen anything like it since. But it's not just the numbers that make this season so impressive. Take into consideration the team that he was playing for. The Chicago Bulls were not a talented team by any stretch of the imagination. That was proven in the previous year when Jordan missed all but 64 games due to a broken foot. They had a 30-52 record. But that's not the only thing. Check out the roster from the 1985-86 Chicago Bulls. Take a look at their 4 leading scorers for the season. Their leading scorer was Orlando Woolridge. He was traded to the New Jersey Nets in the offseason for a 2nd-round draft pick. Next up, we have Quinton Dailey. He was their 2nd leading scorer, but he left to play for the Los Angeles Clippers. Their next leading scorer was the legendary George Gervin, but he left to play overseas in Italy. Now we have their 4th leading scorer, Sidney Green. He was also traded away for pieces that would end up being of no use to the Chicago Bulls. So this team that wasn't talented to begin with lost all of their best scorers. Who was called upon to help MJ on the offensive end? It was Charles Oakley, who was only in his 2nd season. That was a team that Michael Jordan was stuck with. I know we like to make fun of how bad the 2006 Lakers were, but this was way worse. If you don't believe me, check out what some of the media members were saying about this team during the season. Roy Johnson of the New York Times called the Bulls talent poor, and that their season will all come down to exhibitions of 1-on-5 basketball. Curry Kirkpatrick of Sports Illustrated wrote that the Bulls were a collection of untested rookies, veteran rejects, and Jordan. He also wrote that if Jordan concentrated on passing to the other Bulls, Chicago might finish 20-62 or 0-82. The Bulls were undeniably the least talented team in the league, and their losing record reflects that. The only way that they could remain competitive was for Michael Jordan to win games by himself. For nearly half the time, that's exactly what he did against professional basketball teams. The opposition knew that the Bulls had no one else that could generate offense. Even with every team putting all their attention on stopping Jordan, he still managed to nearly shoot over 50% from the field. But that's not the only factor that makes his efficiency so impressive. It should also be noted that he was playing high-intensity basketball on both ends of the court. He would make this incredible move at one end and then stop your best perimeter player at the other end. In fact, the numbers suggest that he was arguably the best perimeter defender in the NBA. For example, he averaged 2.9 steals per game, which was 2nd in the league. He finished 1st among all guards in blocks. He had a 1.5 blocks per game average. In this regard, he made history. He became the first player to have more than 200 steals and 100 blocks in a season. Since then, only Hakeem Olajuwon and Scottie Pippen have been able to accomplish this feat. He also finished 4th in defensive win shares and 7th in defensive box plus minus. He wasn't like other players who only play one side of the floor to save energy. He was doing it all for this team. Take for example his performance against the 76ers when he had 56 points and 8 steals. Or his game against the Cavaliers when he had 43 points, 8 steals, and 5 blocks. But of all of his incredible performances, his favorite one came against the bad boy Pistons. Why is that? This is what he said to Sports Illustrated. Quote, "Because we won, and because I switched onto Adrian Dantley in the last few minutes, stole the ball 3 times, and held him without a basket. A victory for defense." End of quote. This was a game where he finished with 61 points on 56% shooting, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. And you wonder why they invented the Jordan rules. It's because they had no answer for him. That is why I believe this is the greatest scoring season of all time. In the playoffs, they faced the same opponent as the previous year. The Boston Celtics won 59 games and were the best team in the East. You might know that the Bulls were swept again by this juggernaut. What you might not know was how close each game was. In Game 1, the Bulls were down by 19 points at halftime. But who was the one that led the comeback? Michael Jordan was relentless in the second half. He displayed a great balance of attacking and getting his teammates involved. This allowed them to tie the game late in the fourth quarter. However, Robert Parrish ruined his moment yet again with this jump shot. On the other end, as Jordan was looking to make his move, this happened.
Jordan holding left, now on the move against Dennis Johnson. Drops the ball.
Out of bounds.
What is he out of bounds? Brad Sellers was standing out of bounds.
It was a rookie mistake by Brad Sellers. It's a fitting example that proves how much their inexperience hurt them throughout the series. In Game 2, they were facing another double-digit deficit in the second half. And again, Michael led the comeback by making some of the most incredible moves. But the Celtics, with their all-star starting lineup, proved to be too good, while the Bulls kept making some head-scratching mistakes. In Game 3, although Jordan had a tough shooting performance, going 9 of 30 from the field, they had a lead going into the fourth quarter. They just couldn't hold on. Larry Bird scored 15 points in the fourth quarter. With that, they completed the sweep. But the Bulls were right there every game. The potential was there. They just needed to give MJ more help. This team lists on its roster some of the slowest and worst shooters ever to play in the NBA. No, those aren't my words. That is a direct quote from a 1964 Sports Illustrated article. And if you don't trust the journalistic work from people that witness this atrocity of a team, here is a quote from the head coach of the San Francisco Warriors. I realized how completely inadequate the team had become. They were even incapable of beating a squad of rookies. That was the team that Wilt Chamberlain was stuck with in the 1963-64 season, and he carried them all the way to the finals. How was he able to do this? Did he average 50 points per game like he did in 1962? Believe it or not, his scoring production decreased by a lot, but he found the secret to success that allowed him to have one of the greatest individual seasons in NBA history. Before we get to that, let's first look at the context. What led the Warriors to be in such bad shape? It all started in the 1962 offseason. The Warriors had just finished a bittersweet ending to their year. They were only one game away from reaching the finals after losing to the Boston Celtics in the final moments of Game 7. At that point in time, the Warriors were located in Philadelphia, but then the team was sold and moved to San Francisco. This was a major move. Not all of the players on the team could afford to move their families out west. So that caused the Warriors' second leading scorer, Paul Arizin, to retire. Then their third leading scorer, Tom Gola, was asked to be traded to an Eastern Conference team. Now all of a sudden, Wilt was stuck with a team that was dreadful on offense. It seemed like the only way that the Warriors could remain competitive was for Wilt to win games by himself. And I mean that in the most literal sense. That led him to have a monster individual season. He averaged 44.8 points per game. Even with that stat line, the Warriors failed to reach the playoffs. They ended the season with a 31-49 record. Not even the greatness of Chamberlain was enough to salvage this team. After that disappointing season, do you know what the Warriors did to improve their roster? Absolutely nothing, which makes sense because they had no intriguing assets. Why would any team want to do business with them unless they were shopping Wilt? This was the exact same team that finished with the third worst record. So at the start of the season, Sports Illustrated wrote that they were the obvious choice to finish with one of the worst records in the NBA. They just didn't have enough talent to give Wilt any kind of help on the offensive end. To have a better idea of this, let's take a brief look at the top 3 scoring options the Warriors had. Their second leading scorer was Tom Meschery. The first word that Sports Illustrated used to describe this player back in 2017 was that he was tall. That's never a great sign. Other than his height, he was also known for being a tough and passionate player. Those are great qualities to have for a role player, a glue guy. But for your second scoring option, you want something a little bit more. He averaged 13.5 points for the season. Right behind him was Wayne Hightower. In the previous year, the Philadelphia Daily News sports writer Jack Kaiser called him the biggest disappointment to hit the NBA in years. So there's that. Although the New York Times also described him as a tenacious rebounder, scoring wasn't his thing. That explains why he only averaged 13.2 points on 38% shooting. Last but not least, there was Guy Rodgers. I'm not about to disrespect this Hall of Famer. He was one of the best floor generals in the NBA. He was a high IQ player, and he knew how to pass it to Wilt even when he had multiple players guarding him. He was responsible for a lot of the points he scored. He was legitimately a great point guard. But again, scoring wasn't his strong suit. He averaged 11 points on 36% shooting. With that context in mind, how was Wilt able to turn this team around? Although they made no significant changes to their roster, they did add a valuable piece. They hired head coach Alex Hannum. If that name sounds familiar, it's because he was the coach for the 1967 Philadelphia 76ers, which was the team where Wilt won his first championship. They had the most dominant season in league history up to that point, in large part because he convinced Wilt that he no longer needed to be a volume scorer. That was the first time they averaged less than 30 points per game, and the Sixers were able to win a record-breaking 68 games. However, it was much easier to convince him to give the ball up when you have all-star players such as Hal Greer, Chet Walker, and Luke Jackson on your team. That wasn't the case for the 1964 San Francisco Warriors. He had every right to not trust his teammates. But to his credit, he was able to convince them to trust his teammates and to dominate the defensive end as he does on offense. Here was the type of season that Wilt had. He averaged 36.9 points on 52% shooting, 22.3 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. He went from averaging 2.4 assists in 1962 to doubling that total 2 years later. He was a much more willing passer, and that helped uplift the energy level that his teammates played with. But their biggest improvement came on the defensive end. They went from finishing dead last in opponents' points per game and having the 4th worst defensive rating to finishing first in opponents' points per game and second in defensive rating. Wilt was the reason behind their dominant defense. He earned a 10.6 defensive win shares, which is the 8th highest mark for a single season. That was the key to their success. Of course, his willingness to pass the ball gave his team a whole new outlook. But if you look at the numbers, they finished last in points and 3rd to last in offensive rating. Their biggest strength was defense, and that is where he made his biggest impact. It was truly Russell-esque. The main difference is that Bill Russell could never dream of putting up the numbers that Wilt was recording. For example, there were 9 games where he scored over 50 points. There were also 2 games where he recorded a 40-point triple-double. The end result was that the Warriors increased their win total by 17 games. They finished with 48 wins and the 3rd best record in the league. He also earned a mind-blowing 25 win shares for the season, which is the 2nd highest mark ever. I believe this is one of his greatest accomplishments. He single-handedly turned this laughingstock of a team into a championship contender. How he didn't win the MVP that year just blows my mind. As great as Oscar Robertson was, it just doesn't compare to the degree of difficulty of Wilt's season. But the question remained, could he carry this team to the finals? They had to go through a tough St. Louis Hawks team led by Bob Pettit and Lenny Wilkins. They also had depth. They had Hall of Fame players such as Cliff Hagan, Zelmo Beatty, and Richie Guerin. Despite all the weapons they had, the Warriors kept the series competitive. They were tied at 2 apiece, and Wilt had one of the greatest performances of his playoff career. In Game 5, he went for 50 points on 69% shooting, 15 rebounds, and 6 assists. After losing in Game 6, it all came down to the deciding Game 7. This was going to determine who was going to play the Boston Celtics in the finals. During this time, Wilt was being criticized for not coming through in pressure games. They would usually bring up his performance in the 1962 series against Boston. In Game 7, he scored 22 points on 15 shot attempts. This was the same player that averaged 50 points on nearly 40 shot attempts that season. No one could understand why he wasn't more aggressive in such an important game, but he responded to his critics in a resounding way. He recorded 39 points on 66% shooting, 30 rebounds, and 6 assists. In the end, the San Francisco Warriors pulled the impossible. They went from being one of the worst teams in the NBA to reaching the finals. The sole reason for their success was Wilt Chamberlain. Take a look at the numbers for that series. He averaged nearly 40 points per game, with no other teammate averaging over 18 points. He not only carried them offensively, but his presence in the paint helped contain Bob Pettit to 42% shooting. That's a 4% drop from his regular season average. It was an incredible all-around performance from Chamberlain. In the finals, they lost in 5 games. They were simply no match for the mighty Celtics, who could neutralize Wilt much better than any other team could. But just imagine if this version of Chamberlain had a decent squad. I believe they would have taken over the league by storm. Despite coming up short from reaching the ultimate goal, this doesn't take away from what he accomplished in this forgone season. In my opinion, it's one of the 10 greatest seasons in NBA history. In my latest book, where I ranked the top 300 regular seasons by a player, I had it ranked 8th all time. In 2009, Dwyane Wade was Jordan-esque. This is a word that should be used sparingly. There are very few players who are capable of playing to those lofty standards, but for one glorious season, Dwyane Wade was worthy of those comparisons. It was record-breaking in every sense of the word. I can remember how the NBA world was reacting after he carried the Miami Heat to his first championship in 2006. He was named Sports Illustrated Player of the Year for his dominant play during that playoff run. We were quick to crown him the best player in the world. We were excited to see how he would follow up on such a legendary performance. However, the Dwyane Wade show was quickly cancelled due to a series of injuries. He played exactly 51 games in each of the following 2 seasons. The worst moment of his career came in 2008. The Heat had a 15-67 record, and they went 10-41 when Dwyane was on the court. The player that was being compared to Michael Jordan was now being compared to Penny Hardaway for all the wrong reasons. It seemed like injuries were going to shorten his career, and we feared that we'd seen the best of him. We should have known better than to doubt him. He returned to playing the best basketball of his career. He recorded his best numbers in various statistical categories. Let's start with his per-game numbers. He averaged 30.2 points on 49% shooting, 7.5 assists, 5 rebounds, 2.2 steals, and 1.3 blocks per game. This is only the 3rd time in league history that a player has averaged over 30 points, 7 assists, 5 rebounds, and 2 steals. He's in the same company as Michael Jordan and James Harden. He's also only one of 4 guards to ever average over 2 steals and 1 block per game. That list includes Michael Jordan, Ron Harper, and Eddie Jones. But it wasn't just his per-game numbers that were historic. He also did something that proves how legendary an all-around player he was. He is still the only one to have ever recorded at least 2,000 points, 500 assists, 150 steals, and 100 blocks in a single season. He excelled in every aspect of the game. He had to be an all-purpose guard out of necessity. That's especially the case when you look at the roster of that team. You'll quickly notice that only one player was remaining from their 2006 title team. That was Udonis Haslem. Everybody else was gone. Right in the middle of his prime, the Heat were forced to rebuild. They had a rookie who was their starting point guard, Mario Chalmers. They also relied a lot on rookie Michael Beasley on offense. In fact, he was the team's 2nd leading scorer. For the majority of the season, he was coming off the bench. Then there was Shawn Marion. He was brought in the middle of the previous season in a blockbuster trade that sent Shaquille O'Neal to the Phoenix Suns. In theory, he was going to bring depth and lead the charge on defense. However, he averaged the least amount of points and rebounds since his rookie year. He admitted that this wasn't the right fit for him. He was traded in the middle of this season for Jermaine O'Neal. Before he came along, their starting center at times was Joel Anthony, who was averaging only 2.2 points per game. They needed a rim protector and someone who could provide scoring in the post. Jermaine was a temporary fix for a roster that had a lot of holes. The success of this team was going to start and end with Dwyane Wade. The way he carried the Miami Heat should be widely recognized as one of the greatest carry jobs in league history. The advanced metrics certainly back up that statement. He recorded a 9.6 value over replacement player rating, which is currently the 20th highest for a single season. By all accounts, this was Wade at his apex. He recorded career highs in points, assists, steals, blocks, win shares, offensive win shares, PER, value over replacement player rating, box plus minus, offensive box plus minus, and defensive box plus minus. He was also the scoring champion that season. That specific accolade highlights how far he had come as a scorer. For years, teams would dare him to score from the perimeter, but now he could consistently score from the outside. If you look at his shooting numbers, his percentage increased significantly from 10 feet and beyond. He was now making teams pay for giving him too much space. In return, that opened up the floor for one of the most explosive players in the league. The injuries did not slow him down in that aspect, and he was able to provide some of the greatest highlight reels. But scoring was only the beginning of how special his game was. His most underrated trait might have been his playmaking abilities. He was always looking for opportunities to set up his teammates. He recognized how much attention he would draw whenever he penetrated to the rim. He was great at finding easy scoring opportunities for his team. There were 2 games where he tied his career high in assists. He posted 16 assists twice. By the end of the season, he finished 8th in the league in assists. But one aspect of the game that he gets plenty of recognition for is his defense. He was arguably the best two-way player in the league, as he finished 3rd in Defensive Player of the Year voting. He also finished 2nd in steals and 18th in blocks, easily the most by any guard that season. When he was on the floor, nobody was safe from getting rejected. The one game that comes to mind came against the New Jersey Nets when he had 2 blocks in the final minute, including when he blocked the 7-1 Brook Lopez. There was another performance he had that put him in rare territory. Against the Toronto Raptors, he had 40 points on 53% shooting and 5 blocks. This is only the 8th time in league history that a non-big man was able to record over 40 points and 5 blocks in a game. He is up there with 2 of the greatest two-way players, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. But if we're talking notable games, there are many more that we can mention that truly highlight how incredible he was that year. There are 3 total games where he scored over 50 points. His season high came in the final game of the year against the New York Knicks. He posted 55 points on 63% shooting, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and 1 block. He was going to make sure that he won the scoring title. Then there was a triple overtime thriller against the Utah Jazz, where he nearly posted a 50-point triple-double. He recorded the insane stat line of 50 points on 49% shooting, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks. It's a perfect example of everything he had to do for his team to win games. That includes his clutch play. He led the league in fourth quarter points that season. There are 23 games where he scored over 10 points in the final period, but what he did against the Knicks was iconic. They were down 15 points at the start of the fourth quarter, and he proceeded to score 24 points in the final period. The Miami Heat ended up winning the game by another monster performance. He had 46 points on 55% shooting, 10 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 steals, and 4 blocks. Once again, he was doing everything in his power for his team to win games. But if we're talking clutch performances, that we have to mention was widely considered one of his most memorable moments. It was when he faced the Chicago Bulls. His team was down 10 points in the fourth quarter, and he did this.
It's alive, baby. That's 16 straight games with a block.
Jay! Guarded by Salmons. He shoots the 3 for the tie. You better believe it. Game-saving play on defense. Moon with a dunk. Comes Wade, circles in, lobs it for Beasley. A crusher.
Anything after he didn't have it.
Here he comes.
4-second clock.
Wade for the score.
Good matchup right here for the Heat.
Salmons.
Wade
Wade with a steal with 2. Wade puts it up for the win.
Yeah,
He
baby!
did it. He did it. Dwyane Wade with the steal and the game winner.
This is the moment that Heat fans will remember forever. This was his house, and he was going to do everything in his power to fight for the city and organization. It's why he's the most beloved player the team has ever had. He ended the game with 48 points on 71% shooting, 12 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 steals, and 3 blocks. When it was all said and done, he led his team to a 43-39 record. Fortunately for him, they played in a conference where it didn't take much to make the playoffs. Even though they only finished 2 games over 500, they finished as the 5th seed. The Miami Heat had one of the best players in the world, and that was good enough for them to win over half their games. There is no question they had one of the greatest regular seasons in league history. However, he only finished 3rd in MVP voting. He was competing against 2 of the greatest players ever, LeBron James and Kobe Bryant. Kobe wasn't as dominant individually, but he led his team to 65 victories. Then there was LeBron, who was at the peak of his powers. From a statistical standpoint, you can easily make the case that this was the greatest regular season of his career. To top it all off, he led his team to 66 victories. The sad truth is that Dwyane Wade peaked at the wrong time. In almost every other season, he would have won the MVP. Unfortunately, he joins a small group of legendary players who never won the MVP because of how tough their competition was. But this was the least of his worries. It was time to focus on the tough road ahead. They're going to face Atlanta Hawks in the first round, the team that they only beat once in the regular season. Game 1 was an indication of how this series was going to go. They lost 90-64. Every single game was decided by over double digits. Dwyane Wade knew that he was going to have to play at a level he's never had before if they're going to beat this team. Unsurprisingly, he did exactly that in the next 2 games. He scored 33 points on 55% shooting, which included going 6 of 10 from the 3. That is tied for his career high in 3-pointers made. In Game 3, he made a conscious effort to get everyone else going and to do all the little things to win. It worked to perfection as all 5 starters scored in double figures. Wade ended up with 29 points on 48% shooting, 8 assists, 7 rebounds, 4 blocks, and 1 steal. They won the game by 29 points. It started to look like the Heat could pull off this upset. However, things started to look ugly. They couldn't get anything going in Game 4, and they blew their best opportunity to put away the Hawks. By Game 5, all momentum was completely shifted to Atlanta's favor. It was clear that their depth was going to be too much to handle. To make matters worse, they're going to be without Jermaine O'Neal for the rest of the series. He suffered a concussion in Game 5. It was going to take a superhero-type effort if they were going to win the next 2 games. That is when the Flash emerged in Game 6. He attacked the defense over and over again. He had his best performance in the playoffs. He had 41 points on 48% shooting. We all knew that he wasn't going to be taken down without a fight. But without their second best player, there was no way that they were going to win Game 7 on the road. The Hawks were going to force anyone else to beat them. They simply didn't have the talent necessary to win in the playoffs. They lost by 13 points. It was a bitter end to his greatest individual season. But this doesn't take away from what he accomplished. With everything that we know now about this team, it was incredible that they were able to reach the playoffs in the first place. They went from being a lottery team in 2008 to being the 5th seed in the very next year. That was all thanks to Dwyane Wade. The Los Angeles Lakers were in a unique situation when Elgin Baylor was asked to report to military duty on January 2nd of 1962. They were losing one of the league's best scorers and rebounders. The pressure was going to be placed on Jerry to take that load. Was he going to be able to deliver? The good news was that he was playing much better compared to his rookie season. In the prior year, he averaged 17.6 points per game on 42% shooting. His level of play rose tremendously in the first half of the season, but now he was going to be the focal point of the offense. He couldn't defer to his star teammates anymore. Teams were now going to put all their attention on stopping West, and they were going to make him prove that he was worth all the hype. At that moment, a legend was born. In the Lakers' first game without Baylor, Jerry West went for 44 points on 54% shooting, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists against Wilt Chamberlain and the Philadelphia Warriors. 2 games later, he goes for 43 points on 46% shooting against Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks. 2 games after that, Jerry West scored his career high of 63 points on 61% shooting against the New York Knicks. This was not the same player who was tentative and inconsistent in his first year. He was now able to assert his will and outperform the NBA's best players. Most teams are much worse when their star player misses an extended period of time, but the Lakers continued winning. He averaged over 34 points during that span, the same amount Baylor averaged the prior season. The Lakers quickly realized that they had two of the 5 best players in the league who were in the prime of their careers. The future of this team was starting to look very bright. This is what he averaged for the season: 30.8 points on 45% shooting, 7.9 rebounds, and 5.4 assists per game. It's no wonder that he finished 5th in MVP voting. We move on to his teammate, Elgin Baylor. He had one of the most unique seasons ever. He served on active duty in the Army and was stationed at Fort Lewis, Washington as a reservist. He was one of the few celebrities and famous athletes who were used as a recruiting model. Elgin was allowed to play the first half of the season thanks to a postponement that was granted to him. He didn't have to report for duty until January 2nd. So he took that time that was given to him and he balled out. He went on to average the most points by any player not named Wilt Chamberlain. But there is a clear difference between the way Wilt would score and Elgin. You could say that was just as revolutionary and impactful. For example, this is what Bob Ryan wrote about his style of play for the Boston Herald. The simple truth is that Elgin Baylor was the most influential basketball player of the past 60 years. He took a game that had been horizontal and only a wee bit vertical and made it both diagonal and a whole lot more vertical. Elgin Baylor revolutionized individual offense. There is basketball BE before Elgin and AE after Elgin. Never forget it. End of quote. Time was ticking before he would leave his team at such a crucial time of the season. In December, he wanted to have one of the most legendary stretches of basketball. He averaged an insane 41.3 points per game during that month. There's one game against the Warriors when he had 63 points, 31 rebounds, and 7 assists. He was the only player who was capable of going toe-to-toe with the great Wilt Chamberlain. But that's not all. There were also 4 games where he scored over 50 points. That includes the legendary stat line he recorded against the St. Louis Hawks. He had 52 points on 44% shooting, 25 rebounds, and 10 assists. It's one of the most unique triple-doubles that you'll ever come across. Oh, I almost forgot. He was coming off a 52-point performance against this very team. Thanks to his extraordinary play, the Lakers went 15-5 during that span, and they had the most wins out of any team. He left the Lakers in great shape by the time he left to report for duty. But what makes this season even more legendary is that he refused to give up until his mission was completed. He was going to find a way to keep the momentum going and help his team get ready for the playoffs. He explained what he would do according to the Boston Globe. I would get a weekend pass that began at midnight Friday and I had to be back at midnight Sunday. I'd take the red-eye Friday to wherever the team was. End of quote. Keep in mind that Baylor would be out for weeks at a time, play a game or two, and then he would return to where he was stationed. He only played 6 games during his time as a weekend warrior. Amazingly, the Lakers won each of those games. Baylor averaged 38.8 points on 45% shooting and 22.3 rebounds per game during that span. He maintained the same level of play despite the unique circumstances that he was in. When he was on the roster, the Lakers had a 77 win percentage, and it makes you wonder how dominant they would have been if he had played all year long. This proves that he wasn't just posting great individual numbers, but he was also helping his team win. Now let's take a look at his overall averages for the season. 38.3 points on 43% shooting, 18.6 rebounds, and 4.6 assists per game. That is the highest scoring average by any player not named Wilt Chamberlain. He finished 4th in MVP voting. We're not just looking at the regular season, but also what they did in the playoffs. The Lakers star duo was playing out of their minds. In the division finals against the Detroit Pistons, they both averaged over 30 points per game. In Game 2, you had Jerry West torching the defense with 40 points on 47% shooting. Then in Game 4, they both exploded for over 40 points. They knew that they needed to play at this level if they wanted to beat the 4-time defending champions, the Boston Celtics. They came as close as you can get. You simply won't find another duo they averaged this stat line in the finals and against a top defensive team. This was a series where Jerry West started his reputation as one of the league's greatest clutch performers. In Game 2, he went to the Boston Garden and scored 40 points on 57% shooting. They were able to steal a victory behind his strong play. But in Game 3, he had one of his most iconic moments. He scored 4 straight points to tie the game at 115 apiece. In the next play, he stole the inbounding pass and scored the buzzer-beating layup. The crowd went crazy. The opportunity to defeat this team seemed very real. But now it was his teammates' turn to make history. In Game 5, he had what many consider the greatest performance in NBA Finals history. He scored a record 61 points on 48% shooting and 22 rebounds. Let's keep in mind that this is the only time that a player has scored over 60 points in the finals. But to also grab over 20 rebounds truly puts his performance on another level. To put this in perspective, there have only been 4 players who recorded over 60 points and 20 rebounds in a game. The other 3 players are Wilt, Shaq, and Luka. However, they've only done it in the regular season. No one has ever done it in the playoffs, let alone in a critical finals game. This game is the ultimate example of his all-around excellence. They were able to take a 3-2 series lead. However, the Celtics were able to force a Game 7. Elgin and Jerry did their job as they combined to score 76 points. They came up big once again, and they had one chance to win the title in the final moments. With 7 seconds left, the Lakers made the crucial error of not giving the ball to either of their star duo. Instead, the championship fell into the hands of Frank Selvey, and he missed. The game went to overtime, and they couldn't hold on. This was the beginning of the greatest rivalry of the NBA, and the performances of those 2 players played a major role. Vince Carter became the most popular figure in all of basketball. It was the 2000 All-Star Weekend in Oakland, California. When it came down to the dunk contest, he gave us the single greatest performance we've ever seen. After this dunk, he was right. It was over. The NBA world was now at the palm of his hands. After that All-Star Weekend, the electricity that he brought to the games can only be compared to a handful of players. Whenever he was alone in the fast break, everybody in the arena would rise as one to brace themselves for what he was about to do. From there, the expectations kept growing and growing. We expected him to do something amazing every game and to top it all off the next day. What's even crazier is that he did exactly that. This is what the Vinsanity era was all about. A couple of weeks after that glorious weekend, he was out to prove his doubters wrong. At the time, no one could deny his God-given ability, but some believed he was lacking in other areas. That includes his shooting abilities. In the simplest terms, they were saying that all he could do was dunk. He proved that there was much more to his game against the Phoenix Suns. This was the first nationally televised game for the Toronto Raptors. In the previous week, the NBA changed its schedule to add the Raptors so the world could see what the hype was all about. He saw a golden opportunity in front of him. He responded by posting his first 50-point game of his career. He had 51 points to go along with 9 rebounds, 3 steals, and 1 assist. Now check out the shooting numbers he recorded. He went 53% from the field, 4 of 8 from the 3, and a perfect 13 of 13 from the free throw line. When you watch the game, you'll quickly realize that nearly all the shots he took were contested. I must remind you that the teams of this era were not super concerned with efficiency. There was a lot more creativity and freedom with the perimeter scorers. And Vince proved that he could create his shot with the best of them. Something that I also noticed was that the play-by-play announcers were drawing a lot of comparisons between him and Michael Jordan. At the time, this was warranted. His athleticism and the attention he was drawing from the public were very similar to his airness. But there was more to Michael Jordan than the dunks and marketing ability, as we all know. Could you also lead your team to victory? Could you deliver in the clutch, time and time again? 2 games after his career-high performance, he had a chance to prove himself again. This came against the Boston Celtics. This was an exciting back-and-forth battle. Both teams traded leads 13 times in the final 4 minutes of the game. With 3 seconds left, Vince saw another golden opportunity to prove he was worth all the hype. He did that and more after making this incredibly tough three-pointer at the buzzer. The confidence he had in himself to take that kind of shot proves that he had all the right stuff. After the game, Tracy McGrady said this about his teammate/cousin. After seeing the 51-point performance against Phoenix, nothing is going to surprise me about him. Nothing. Hold that thought, T-Mac. Remember, the question was asked if he could deliver time and time again. Was the Celtics game just a fluke? 4 games later, he proved that it wasn't. This time, it was against the Los Angeles Clippers. How do we know that this video isn't a classic case of revisionist history? Was Vince Carter really that big during this time? To know for sure, you must pass the road test. In other words, can you turn a whole arena to go against a home team and cheer for you? That's what he did after slamming down this insane one-handed alley-oop. The momentum shifted completely on his side, and everyone knew it. That was huge when the Raptors were trying to come back from a double-digit deficit that late in the game. Even the Clippers' play-by-play announcers were offended by the turn of events.
The fans got what they wanted. Okay, have your cheers, enjoy it, get it out of your system.
Whether they liked it or not, they couldn't stop what was about to happen. In the final minute, he made this shot over Lamar Odom to tie the game. Then with 1 second left, the Raptors found themselves in a familiar situation. As what happened with the Celtics, they were down by 2 points. Once again, Vince wasn't looking to play another 5 minutes. He made yet another buzzer-beating three-pointer. As the replay showed, the crowd was cheering with joy. It was almost like the Raptors were playing a home game. If you frequent live sporting events, you know how hard it is for a road team to accomplish this, no matter how bad your team is. Only the biggest of stars can have that kind of effect. At the peak of insanity, he also brought that kind of buzz to any sports arena. 5 games after the Clippers' game winner, he added another clutch moment. He wanted to strike fear in his opponents in crunch time, and there's no question that they needed to respect him after what he did to the Houston Rockets. Poor Steve Francis had to be up by Vince one last time. He scored 11 of the team's final 13 points. With 32 seconds left, he made this three-pointer that's reminiscent of the Kawhi shot the Raptor fans remember very well. With 10 seconds left, Vince is holding the ball, contemplating what to do. This play shows how incredibly quick he was. Hakeem was right under the basket. Vince was just stepping out of the three-point area, and yet, Hakeem still didn't have enough time to make a contest. I don't blame him for not wanting to be part of a poster dunk. That all happened within a 1-month span. His popularity grew even further, and it wasn't just because of a dunk contest. This stretch of games helped him become one of the most recognizable players, even to a generation of fans that never got to see him play as a member of the Toronto Raptors. We all got to witness him become much more than just the greatest slam dunk champion. He was an incredibly skilled offensive player who was also not afraid of the moment. The only problem is that when a player has that much hype, the detractors try to make their criticism as loud as all the love they're receiving. So for reasons that are beyond me, he was selected to the All-NBA third team and finished 10th in MVP voting. He was barely considered a top 10 player. I think he deserved a little more love. Here's what the numbers tell us. He finished 4th in scoring, 4th in offensive win shares, 4th in offensive box plus minus, 5th in value over replacement player rating, 7th in win shares, 9th in box plus minus, and 10th in PER. Did the analysts have access to all these metrics? They did not. But here's what they did know. The Raptors finished with a 46 win percentage the previous year, and they improved to a 55 win percentage. He was a reason why they had their first winning season and playoff appearance in franchise history. He accomplished all of this in only his second season. How many players can say that they had the NBA world in the palm of their hands that quickly in their careers? If only you were there to witness the insanity era. It's what drove him to finish first in All-Star voting in 4 of the first 5 years of the 2000s, and it's what eventually drove him to have a Hall of Fame career. But what about you all? Do you remember these seasons? Which of these seasons do you think is the most underrated? Where would you have them ranked among the all-time greatest? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.